Welcome to Health Plus. My name is Pastor Dr. Anthony Osegale, and I'm so delighted to have you with me today once again. We are going to be delving into a very, very important topic today, home safety. This is very vital when you consider that a very vital part of medicine is prevention of injuries and disease conditions. When we return from this short break, you'll meet my guests. Welcome back. I have with me on set today, on my extreme left, Pastor Yomi Morakinyo. He's a safety consultant. Welcome on set.
Thank you very much.
And on my immediate left, Pastor Joy Osegale. She's a security and safety specialist. You're welcome on set as well.
Thank you.
So we're talking about the issue of home safety. And today we want to take a look at fire and kitchen safety and how important that is, as regards preventing anything that can result in injuries and therefore increasing the visitation to emergency units in hospitals. So maybe we should just start off with talking about what is safety, and then let's just go straight into what actually can happen in the kitchen and also what has to do with fire around the house. Okay.
I'll start like this.
Yeah.
Understand, first of all, that we spend most of our time at home. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in the home, you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you're doing one or two things. And then in the kitchen, obviously, that is where you have the stove, where you have fire being ignited. And a lot of things can go wrong, actually, there if you are not aware of the knowledge of safety and the precautions that you need to take. Mm. Now, because of the number of hours and times we spend at home in the kitchen, the probability of an emergency or safety issues arising are quite high. Mm-hmm. And then you ask the question, you said, what is safety? I would like to say, simply put, that safety is the state or condition of being free from harm or injury. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's simple enough. Anybody can relate with that. So if you are going to have an injury-free stay at home, injury-free working in the kitchen, you have to be aware of certain things that you must control. Now, safety is about conditioning your mind, being aware of your surroundings, and keeping simple things, out of reach, first of all, of children, and then doing the right things at the right time, the right way. Because basically, as human beings, we have a way of doing things. Once you are used to a way of doing things, it is very easy to condition yourself that way. And if you start wrongly, if you learn the wrong things from the beginning, you will continue until something stops you from doing that thing again. And one of the things that can stop you is actually an accident or an injury of some sort. So when you're in the kitchen, what are the first things that you look at? What do you do, in terms of keeping things out of reach of children? Number one, if you have matchbox that you use to strike your fire to light the stove, that's one thing you must do. Keep it away from children. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, where do you keep your gas cylinder? Mm-hmm. Where do you keep your cylinder bottle? Is it inside the kitchen? Is it outside? Is it inside the space created for it in the gas cooker? Where do you keep? How do you regulate? Do you switch off your gas cylinder bottle when you are done cooking? Do you leave it on when you are traveling? Do you forget to switch it off, or do you leave it on? So these are simple questions and simple things that you must check to ensure that you have a safe environment, especially in the kitchen. So preventing fire hazards from erupting in your kitchen, there are many things you can do. And apart from the fire itself, the flame itself, what do you do with flammable liquid, like your fat and oil, your frying oil, all those things? How do you do it? What do you do? How do you keep yourself safe? How do you make use of these things? When you have a hot frying pan full of hot oil, after you've fried your whatever it is you're frying, how do you make sure that you don't introduce something that can spark off a fire? For instance, when you're frying and it's hot, do you introduce water into it? Inadvertently, though, do you introduce water into it? And when that happens, fire can erupt from there. So what do you do? So I'm sure we're going to get to what you do eventually, but we're starting with actually what you can do to keep the
Very
place safe.
interesting indeed. A whole lot of things to actually take a look at in the kitchen. As you were talking, it just came to my mind by what you were describing, that the kitchen appears to be a place where you can actually have a lot of incidents if control is not introduced. Okay, so you may want to say one or two things, taking a look at the home safety in this area, and then, just delve into what he's also spoken about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, so we would want to, the fire in itself is not a bad thing, because we need fire to warm ourselves. We need fire to prepare our meals. So when we're looking at home safety and, drilling it down to the kitchen, we're talking about how do we have a controlled environment to reduce incidents or accidents, and if they do occur, how do we minimize the impact of this fire outbreak? So one thing you must pay attention to is the housekeeping of your kitchen.
Okay.
It's very, very important. You want to ensure that everything is in the place where it should be. And when you are making use of your cooking gas, first of all, the esteemed Pastor Yomi talked about us having the bottle, that's the cylinder, outside, and that's very, very important. You may be staying in a home where, it is not your building, but you must devise a way. You must devise a way to ensure that your cooking bottle is not close to the burner. It's absolutely very, very important. And the same too for your fire extinguishers.
But why is that important? Why is it important not to have the burner in the kitchen? I mean, you said something about it being outside. Why is that important?
Because that's the source. That's like a time bomb, a ticking time bomb. And if there is a fire outbreak, you will not be able to disconnect the fire from increasing or from spreading from the source, because the bottle is inside the kitchen. So it needs to be out. And then as a woman or anyone making use of the kitchen, when you are making use of a pot or a saucepan that has a long handle, how do you place the handle? We've seen so many or heard about lots of incidents in the kitchen where mama is, maybe frying and the saucepan is drawn out, and then the kids are playing and they run through and come in contact with that handle, and the oil, everything on it pours.
And the kids are not really meant to be playing in the
They are
kitchen,
not
running
supposed to.
around when cooking is ongoing.
Kitchen
not
is not a
supposed to.
playground.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be for children. But I would like to take it from where you started. I like the angle you're coming from, But to add to what you've said, you said the bottle, the gas cylinder bottle, is the source where you have flammable gas. Now, that's what you use to cook the butane.
That's like the fuse.
That's exactly. Now, the beautiful thing about what she has pointed out is that you can have gas leakage, and you will not know.
Okay, so
that's
if it's
actually
inside,
the main issue.
the
When
kitchen,
it's inside,
it's in a locked
it's in a contained
enclosure
area. So and then this is another part of safety that many people don't actually take into cognizance. It is not many people that can actually smell the gas, the butane that is being released from the bottle.
That's true.
So many times we've had explosion because there was gas leakage in the kitchen, but the people using the kitchen did not have the sense of smell to smell that there is a leakage. So all they came to do was to strike a match and boom.
And that's also now we have cookers that you don't have to use the match.
Yes, igniter.
It is kind of automatic. And there is also a risk with that, even though it has made cooking easier, where you don't have to be stranded. Maybe it's nighttime and there's no matchstick. But we must also be very, very alert to the norm, okay? Because we've seen situations, just because you don't need that stick, it can be left on. I thought about that when you mentioned the fact that
that's very true,
that the gas can be smelling.
Yeah.
And all that. So even though the bottle may be outside, if there is no accurate alertness to ensure that the norm is off and it is where it should be, gas can still be seeping out, and that can be a huge hazard. at the end of the day.
Very vital. So we're hearing that it's very important to take a look at the siting of the source of of gas as a source of fire coming out, and then you're also talking about the fact that it's important to ensure that you control the positioning of the knob, so getting the gas to come on. So there needs to be checks,
definitely,
from time to time, to ensure that maybe the kids didn't go there to play. The kids need to be educated to also realize that the cooking gas is not something to use for as a toy, okay? And so you don't go near that all the time wanting to do one thing or the other, so that's vital. And then that idea of having the gas cooker outside, I mean, that really prevents a whole lot of incidents, especially where gas was leaking in the kitchen or just escaping in the kitchen and nobody knew about it and went and struck a match or something.
Is it possible to add something?
Oh, sure.
Good.
Sure.
In all of these things, when you put the gas cylinder outside, it is still connected through a hose,
okay,
to the gas cooker inside.
Yes.
The hose can be a source of leakage. All right. Like what you said, leaving the knob in the open position without knowing it. There's no ignition, no fires coming out from it, but it's unknowingly open and gas is leaking into the kitchen. Now, one of the very first thing you can do to ensure your safety in the home, in the kitchen, the moment you open the door to enter the kitchen, open the windows.
Yeah.
Open the windows, that dissipates the gas that could have accumulated overnight or whatever. So in case there was a leakage,
and don't put on the light.
And don't put on the light, because there's something you
don't
call
use the
arcing.
light switch. Yeah.
There's something I regularly do on this program, when something is an action item. All the things we've said so far, action items, and then something I want to re-emphasize. I usually request my guests to look straight in the camera, look at our viewers, and say what you just said to them. When you come into the kitchen and you have an intention of maybe cooking or something, one of the first things that must be done, you were saying that.
Yes.
Tell them once again.
Open your kitchen windows. Now, that serves as a way of dissipating whatever accumulated gas you could have had in the kitchen at that time. Because if there's a leakage, you might not know it, and then it's concentrated in the kitchen, and then you strike a match or you turn on your cooker knob and it sparks into life. It can also ignite accumulated gas.
Or even if they turn on the
light switch.
Light switch, because there's something called arcing, that a spark that connects when you put on the light switch. I mean, that we've had stories of people who have had explosions in their homes because they switch on the light in the kitchen, and then there's a spark, and then there's an explosion.
So to be safe to say, when you get into your kitchen, you will want to smell first before you put on the light.
Well, it's so interesting, and I just want us to go on and on and on and on and on, because I have lots of questions I want to ask on this show, but we have to go on a break now. Don't touch that dial. Stay with us. When we return, we will continue our discussion. Welcome back. We've been talking about home safety, particularly fire and kitchen safety. Now, we were discussing about entering the kitchen with the intention of cooking, and one of the first things you need to do is just to make sure you open the windows, so that if there's a case of maybe inadvertently some gas had leaked out into that environment, that enclosure, it can have a point of escape. Now, that's very vital. Okay, so I want to go into something else, because basically what we've been doing is prevention of fires, right? Now, how about those who are using kerosene stoves?
There's a whole lot of story in the use of kerosene stove, yes.
Yeah.
We have situations where people are not knowledgeable enough. They think they know, but they don't know enough. Now, we have issues of adulterated kerosene. We have issues of refilling the stove while
it is
on. That I do not understand, why people till date still have issues with simply turning off and waiting just 5 minutes of turning off your stove and then refilling.
It's the same character of turning in the fuel
while the generator is on. I mean,
on.
I cannot understand that. Viewers, please listen to me. Hear me and hear me good. 5 minutes of turning off your generating set or turning off your kerosene stove and refilling will not starve you.
You know what? Alternatively, the Bible says, who would want to build a house without
Without
first of all
counting the
taking the
cost.
cost? So why don't you, you want to, prepare a meal, be proactive. You can as well check to ensure that the kerosene
kerosene
that you
is
have
enough.
inside will be enough.
But to take you up on that, I can attest to people who say, "Oh, I did not know the exact amount, but I didn't have enough money to go buy, so I was hoping
It would be enough.
It would be enough." But while cooking, I discovered it wasn't, so I had to go turn in, more kerosene. But whatever the reason is, it is not safe. Though you might have done it and you might have escaped a fire situation, but it is not safe. And then like I said earlier, we have the situation of adulterated kerosene. We have going to buy kerosene with a container that was used to buy petrol initially. And it was not washed out, it was not rinsed out, it just bought, and mixing kerosene and petrol together, the flammability is different now. It's changed. So you've added something to it, an element that wasn't supposed to be there. So you cannot afford to assume that this is okay. It might not have been adulterated by you. You could have gone to buy an adulterated kerosene or whatever the case. Now, that is for certain areas of the world, but there are some areas where they don't use that. But wherever you use kerosene stove, you need to be extremely cautious. In this part of the world where we're in, we've had situations of people having, burns, and many did not even recover from it. Whole families being destroyed. Like you were saying that children should not be in the kitchen. It's the same situation. While you're cooking, it is not, wherever you're cooking, whatever you're cooking with, it is not an area for children
it's not a playground.
to play.
I would like to say something concerning that, because we need to train our kids too. So I'm not for the children not being in the kitchen, because we need to have them support us in the kitchen, but
it's not a playground.
Yes, it is not a playground.
You can't be running around and
Absolutely.
So which means that there is a certain age, because there is a certain age you can't control a child. He doesn't understand what you're doing. So at a certain age that a child comes to, and you can only tell in your own child, because it's different for different children. So you can only tell in your own child how ready is this child in doing this.
Okay, so we've talked so much about how we can prevent the incidents of fire, maybe in the kitchen. We even went on to talk about, generating sets and all that. Now, you've done everything you're supposed to do, and now there is, sadly, a fire incident. What should be done? What are the first steps to take immediately? What do we need to have in the homes that can enable members of the family put out the fire?
Okay.
Yeah.
For the first thing I would like to say is that we need to starve the fire. Okay. We need to knock off one of the elements that bring about fire. And the easiest thing to do if you're frying, for example, is to use the lid of the pot or the frying pan. And that is why, as a woman, I advise for every cooking in the kitchen, it must not be left unattended to. Because you can fight fire easily when it is still at the incipient stage, when it is at the
early
stage, right? So the situation where something is on fire and whoever is preparing the meal is watching movies and all that,
or in the phone, just doing some stuff on social media.
It's not advisable at all. So you are in the kitchen there and fire comes up, you use the lid and you knock it off. You kill the fire immediately. You can also have fire blankets. For those that maybe the fire blanket cannot be, easily available. You can have maybe a towel. Yeah.
A wet towel.
A wet towel. So ensure you have that in your cabinet or something. At that time, you just get it soaked and you use it on the pot or on the saucepan that is on fire. And I heard something about Coke.
Yeah. Coke has a lot of carbon dioxide, because of the carbonated water.
You mean Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola, yes, thank you. Or let me say carbonated drink.
Carbonated drink.
Yeah,
so any carbonated drink,
yes,
high carbonated.
Yeah, with a high level of carbon in it.
Yes.
So now this is the thing. When you do that, all it does is to smother, to cut off the oxygen. But I like to take from where she said, she mentioned something to cut off oxygen. Now, to elaborate on that, there is what you call the fire triangle. Fire can only start when there are three things at play. All three things must be complete.
Plus the chemical reaction.
Exactly. Now you have the heat, you have the oxygen, and then
fuel.
you have the fuel that actually burns when the fire starts.
Okay.
Now, in this case, you mentioned something about covering the pot. Now, that means that when you cover the pot, what you've done is to smother. You've cut off oxygen. The other thing you can cut off is the fuel. Whatever is burning, you can stop that one from burning. And then you can also remove the heat. So that's why you have different kinds of fire extinguishers. You have the water-based, you have the foam, you have the chemical, DCP, dry chemical powder. So all these, they serve a purpose in breaking that fire triangle. If you can remove one thing from the fire triangle, the fire definitely will not stay.
From what you just said now, what's the role of fire extinguishers? Is it necessary or is it absolutely vital for every home to have a fire extinguisher?
Very necessary. The use of fire extinguishers cannot be overemphasized. But apart from having it, you must know how to use it. And then you must be certain that it has not expired. So it's very key that we have fire extinguishers, and of course that we know how to use it.
So it's not enough to have the fire extinguisher in the house.
No.
And it's not enough to just say, I bought one 5 years ago.
No.
So how...
I can tell you stories upon stories of people that have fire extinguishers in the house, and it served them no good because they did not know how to use it. It's like giving somebody a gun, and you never train the person how to use the gun. It's useless, no matter how lethal, how powerful, how dangerous that weapon is. So far, you don't have the know-how, the knowledge of using that weapon or that particular equipment, then it's useless to the person. I know of a gentleman who worked in an oil company and was trained, like every staff is trained to. They trained them on how to use a fire extinguisher, how to put out fire. He bought the extinguisher, put it in his house, but did not show his family members how to use it. So it was useless. He was at work one day when the generator caught fire. Wow. And they couldn't do anything. They had to call him from his place of work. So but before he came, a neighbor who was knowledgeable in that particular area was able to help them. So you can imagine if you don't have the knowledge, things will have gone wrong, even though you have the right equipment at your fingertips. And of course, not just having fire extinguisher, not just knowing how to use the placement, where you place the extinguisher in your house. If you place the fire extinguisher in a place where fire hazard is likely to occur, and then you place it in such a way that when the fire occurs, you cannot go past to go and have access to the extinguisher. It's of no use. So there are many things we consider. Now, we can as well say that there are some people who can't afford to have a fire extinguisher. Like she has said, she has given some pointers. You might not have the real deal. You might not have the fire blanket. You might not have the extinguisher, but there are things you can do that can help you. For instance, some people have said that if you mix detergent in water, it brings out foam. It can also help to smother, the fire. But beyond that, there are different kinds of fire. We've been talking about kitchen fire.
Yes.
And in the kitchen, you can have fat and oil catching fire. You can have the food, like you said, not cooking and not paying attention, unattended cooking. You can have that happening. You can have, even electrical fire can happen in the kitchen. So there are different kinds of fire extinguishers you use for different kinds of fires. You cannot use water-based extinguisher for an electrical fire, for instance. It stands to reason, common sense. So you need to know the kind of extinguisher you're using. You need to know how to use them, and you need to know the kind of fire that is happening.
Okay, one more thing I want to quickly ask before we run out of time on this particular episode. Very interesting. Okay, we've dealt with localized fire, basically, in one particular area. How about where there's a situation of there's a fire source somewhere in the house, smoke has filled everywhere? How are the members of that particular family meant to posture to be able to exit that home while the fire has been taken care of?
Okay, please.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that, first of all, in your home, there must be an idea of a fire escape. What do you do in an emergency, whether fire emergency or any other? So
that means every family needs to have this.
There's a plan. There must be a plan.
This training in the home.
It might not be. It might not be so official. It might not be. But
this
an
discussion.
idea. That's why I say an idea.
Yes,
your kids, your children, your wife, your husband, anybody living with you must have an idea of what to do in case of an emergency, or especially now that we're talking about fire emergency. Now, if there is fire anywhere, first of all, I'd like to say, if you can, and I think you should, have a smoke detector at home. There are very inexpensive ones that you can have, battery operated. Have a smoke detector. The slightest smoke that occurs in the house, the alarm goes off, you can get a smoke detector. Now, apart from that, if the fire is raging and the smoke is thick, one of the things you must be careful to do is, number one, do not panic. It is easy to say, I know what to do when there's nothing happening, but once the fire starts, confusion can set in, especially if you were sleeping or there is no power supply, there is no light you can't see. So it is easy to get confused. Somebody locks the door. I know in this part of the world, we are so security conscious. We lock the door, we lock the gate, we lock the grill, we lock everywhere.
And then you took the key
and
somewhere
then you
else.
put the key somewhere. And then in an emergency, you just wake up, there is smoke everywhere. To know where the key is might be an issue. So you must be able to tell, this is where we leave our keys every
So
night.
there has to be a plan. And of course, if the smoke is all over the place, you want to go down.
You need to go down.
And then maybe crawl your way
and
out.
don't switch on the light.
Absolutely.
Very
Now,
important.
we will take a little bit of a look at this, in maybe another episode. But I just want to say this to us. Remember, this is one of the benefits of being born again and filled with the Holy Spirit. When you're born again and filled with the Holy Spirit, you have direction. You have direction. And you understand that there is a divine protection that you have. Let me just quickly read to you from Psalm 91 verse 10. It says, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. Verse 11, for he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Talking about divine angelic protection. And then there's a lot of times the Spirit of God gives these promptings. Go check what is on the top of the fridge. Go open that door and see. Don't ignore those promptings. It may be the Spirit of God just directing you to prevent an incident that was just about to happen. On that note, I'd like to say a very big thank you to my guests on the set today. Thank you so much, Pastor Yomi. Thank you so much, Pastor Joy. I hope when we invite you again to be with us, you oblige us.
Definitely.
It's been a wonderful time having you with us. And I want to thank you for participating in this episode of Health Plus today. As I always say to you, remember, you can always send us a comment or contribution. Our social media handles are on the screen right now. Our phone numbers are there for you to call. And of course, the email is right there for you to send us an email. We'll be so glad to hear from you. Until we come your way again on Health Plus, I always say to you, ensure that you stay healthy.